What's going on, family? It's your favorite Pastor Ty here, and it's another Sunday, and I got a word for you. Sometimes you get sick of it, and there's a woman in Mark chapter 5. She says, I'm sick of it, and her being sick of it leads her to some actions, and I think God has something to say. So listen, tune in. Let's go in and see what God has to say today. I'll see you on the other side.
Can you give my sermon title to somebody beside you and say, I'm sick of this? I'm sick of this. I didn't say I'm sick of you. I said I'm sick of this. Typically, my mornings begin the same way. Half a cup of oatmeal, butter spray, and brown sugar. No need for an alarm. My body just seems to wake up between 4 to 5 a.m. Eat my breakfast, and I'm off to the gym. Gym is a bit of a journey in my former place of living, but now it's a bit closer. But going to the gym, I leave as early as possible because I want to get my day started. It's been my routine for quite some time now because the past decade or so of my life has been marked by a ton of transitioning from different cities into different states and different social circles, different jobs and occupations, different ministries. It's been a lot of transition. And due to all of the transition, the one constant thing in my life has been the gym, which is why this routine is so useful for me, because out of all of the changing and all of the transitioning, the gym has always, for me, been the one constant. So people ask me all the time, Ty, why do you go to the gym every day? Is it for vain reasons? Absolutely. But it's also, it's true. But it's also because of the reality that in the midst of all the changing, the weights are always the same. The machines are typically always the same. And I can remember when I first moved to the DMV, I had been there for about 8 months at that particular time. And my routine was the same. And I was going through my routine. However, I felt some discomfort in my lower back. And I couldn't figure out where it come from, and it wouldn't go away. So my gym had a doctor, and I scheduled an appointment. I went in that morning and went through the basic assessment. He had me do various bends and stretches. But then on various places of my body, he would apply pressure and then ask this question, is it pressure or is it painful? He would go to a different joint and then squeeze and then ask me a question, is it pressure or is it painful? He did the same thing to my back after putting his elbow in my back and then asked me, is it pressure or is it painful? Now, I was getting a little bit aggravated by this time. And so out of frustration, I said, hey, doc, what is the difference between pain and pressure? I said, because to me, they both feel the same. And he responded to me, which is what I want to give to you. He said, pain is when pressure has gone past a certain threshold. He said, pain is when pressure has become obnoxious. He went on further to say, it's important to be able to discern the difference between what is painful and what is pressure. Because if it's painful, you need to go and get some help. If it's pressure, you can learn to deal with that. Perhaps that's exactly where we find this woman in Mark chapter 5. Not in a place of pressure, but in a place of pain. That the writer seems to suggest that there's something sinister going on. Notice this description in Mark chapter 5. She had endured much under many doctors. The word there is endured. What an interesting phrase, interesting word, endured under many doctors. An interesting way of putting it, because in the Greek, that word means she literally suffered under many doctors. There was no healthcare system. Her medical needs had been funded by her own pocket, but now the text lets us know that she had spent all that she had. And typically the expectation is that the more you go and spend, the better you and I become. But this woman's reality is a bit different. The more she went, the more she spent, the worse off she became. FIBC, can't you see her on this particular day? Whatever day of the week that was, whether early in the morning or late in the afternoon, she got up that day and looks in the mirror. And while looking in the mirror, she remembers how full and long her hair used to be. She remembers how at every function, at every brunch, the girls would always compliment her and tell her how demure and cutesy she was. However, those days are in the past now. She actually has been confined to her room, ducking and dodging the landlord for the past 12 years because the text says she grew worse. And what about once upon a time being the socialite she was, the life of the party, but death is all that she knows now. And within the past 12 years, as she looks at her nails and her skins, it appears as if she has aged 1,000 years. But today is different than all the others. Because for whatever reason, for whatever rationale, for whatever was different about that particular day, she resolved within herself, I've got to do something about this today. You see, this day for her was the personification of Queen Fannie Lou Hamer when she said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I got to be honest here today, and as I get into your business, and it's just me and you sitting here today, maybe that's the reason many of us are stuck in situations. Maybe that's the reason why many of us are stuck in circumstances and relationships right now, because you aren't sick enough of it yet. Maybe the reason why you keep dealing with what you're dealing with and enduring what you're enduring is because you aren't tired enough of it yet. Maybe the talk that you have with your friends and your social media friends suggests one thing, but your actions portray another. If you were really tired, you would do something about it. If you were really tired of that job, you fill out an application. I ain't say just quit all willy-nilly. I say get to applying. If you were really tired, you would do something about it. If you were really sick of it, that means there's something for you and I to do, because remember, pain is an indication that you need help outside of yourself. You see, I told you, FIBC, I can remember growing up in my household as a little boy and informing my mother, as spoiled children do, that mama, I'm hungry and I needed something to eat. And mama would aggravate my nerves because she would respond with the same statement every single time that still haunts me at 33 years of age. She'd say, there's food in there, there's chicken in there, there's turkey in there, there are leftovers in there. You see, there was always the refrigerator, and I would respond back, mama, I don't want what's in there. And then she would respond back, well, I guess you ain't hungry enough then. I think we all had the same mama. I don't know. But maybe what mama was telling a spoiled little brown boy in Memphis, Tennessee is what God is trying to tell you in Phoenix, Arizona on this Sunday morning. Is that I know you saying that you're hungry, but maybe the reason is things haven't changed is you ain't hungry enough yet. You ain't sick enough yet. You ain't tired enough yet. You ain't sick of it. You ain't frustrated enough yet. You ain't tired enough yet. Why don't you nudge your neighbor and say, are you really tired of it? Are you really frustrated? And I don't know about you, your friends are tired of you calling them and telling all your business after they done told you to leave months ago. And don't you know that next to your decision has to be some action? Maybe you ain't tired enough of it. Yeah. Maybe what mama was telling a spoiled little brown boy in Memphis, Tennessee is what God is trying to tell you in Phoenix, Arizona on this Sunday morning. Is that I know you saying that you're hungry, but maybe the reason is things haven't changed is you ain't hungry enough yet. You ain't tired enough of it. Yeah. And so today, FIBC, I want to have a conversation with the tired folk today, because this passage has something specifically to the tired people. Because hear me, write this down if you're taking notes. When you are tired, hear me, you've got reason, or you got action, you got grounds, hear me, to hold on and the possibility of wholeness. Let me remix that one more time because it was good to me. When you are tired, you got a reason, you got action, you got grounds to hold on because of the possibility of wholeness. Can I show you to you in the text? You see, it shows us in this passage that Jesus responds to painful places with an opportunity to move on, hold on, and to go on. Can I try it one more time? Because up here they not listening to me. I said Jesus responds to the painful places of our lives, always with an opportunity to move on, to hold on, and to go on. You see, it is when you're sick and tired, you got a reason to move on. Look at verse 21 of chapter 5. It says, when Jesus had crossed over again by the boat to the other side. Preachers, the scholars, the Gospel of Mark records a number of crossings of Jesus. You see, the popularity of Jesus has arisen now, and Jesus by boat is leaving what's called a particular Judean jurisdiction by boat to what Mark deems as the other side. You see, one scholar shares that perhaps this crossing is more than just a geographical crossing. What also Jesus is doing is that Jesus is moving from one political unit to another. I know, let me stay there, I'll come get you. It's not just a crossing geographically. Jesus is also crossing barriers of different ideological and political perspectives. You see, it's important to note, listen, at this church we gonna learn and shout at the same time. It's important to note that at the Sea of Galilee, that was a place where all political worldviews converge. You see, Galilee was primarily Jewish, and the Decapolis was primarily Hellenistic, and the area called the Galantis was a mixture of both. At this one body of water were people that had three different ideological political perspectives, and there at the river, there at the sea, Jesus says, I've been over here with the Jews in Galilee, but now it's time for me to cross over into a different perspective, into a body of people that don't look at life the same way as they do, to a body of people that don't process things the same way they do on this side. You see, the last crossing, Jesus gets off of the boat and he's met by a man that is inflicting harm on himself. The Bible says that he lives amongst dead people, and the author describes him as a man with an unclean spirit. A man with an unclean spirit is found on the other side of the river. But you know, of course, that's what's supposed to happen. Unclean people are always on the other side, aren't they? A man with an unclean spirit is found on the other side of the river, because that's what happened. Unclean people are never where you and I are. Unclean people are always on the other side. Unclean people always live on the other side of the valley. Unclean people are always on the other sections of wherever we are. You see, unclean people are typically regulated to places that are far away from us. But when Jesus crosses back across the Sea of Galilee, he comes into contact with a woman that was bleeding for 12 years. What you must understand is that socially, her bleeding would have rendered her unclean. But hold on, I thought unclean people were only over there. I thought unclean people were only down the street. I thought unclean people were only the people that sat in the back. And God said, no, Ty. As a matter of fact, it's unclean folk wherever you and I go. There are unclean people that sing up here in FIBC every Sunday. There are unclean people that are playing instruments at FIBC. There are unclean people that got Reverend Doctor in front of their names. There are unclean people that call themselves being deacons and missionaries and prayer warriors. They're unclean. Matter of fact, let me tell you something. I don't know if you know it, but the person sitting next to you is unclean. They got some stuff they ain't want to tell you about. They got some situation they been in that they don't want to let you know about. That we got to be careful not to regulate people that we deem as unclean to the other side, because Jesus wants you to know that there are unclean folk on both sides of the river. But hold on, that ain't the shout. The shout is that while there are unclean folk on both sides, Jesus said, I'll still get to wherever they are. Who am I talking to in FIBC today that say, yeah, Rev, I was on the other side. Rev, I was the one they talked bad about. I was the one that they said would never amount to anything. But the only reason my life has changed is because Jesus showed up to where I was and changed my life for the better. And Jesus meets this woman, unnamed, but labeled by her condition. I notice verses 25 through 26. I know y'all got to go to brunch, but I'm going to take my time today. Now, a woman suffering from bleeding for 12 years had endured much under many doctors. She had spent everything she had, and she was not helped at all. On the contrary, became worse. Verse 27, having heard about Jesus. I told y'all last Sunday, we're going to learn how to shout off reading the Bible. Verse 25, 26, woman suffered from bleeding for 12 years, enduring much under many doctors, spent everything she had, was not helped at all. On the contrary, became worse. Verse 27, she heard. No, it's too late. Don't shout now. She heard about Jesus. We're given reason as to why this day she says, I'm going to do something different than what I've done the past 12 years before. The reason she decides to move differently is because she heard about Jesus. Which begs the question, what is it that she heard? Y'all ready? I don't know. I know. See, that's what preachers be messing up. They be lying to y'all to make some. No. I don't know. I don't know what she heard. But maybe it's not important about what she heard. Maybe the question is, what have you heard? Why is it that you have resolved to sit where you've been sitting for so long? Why is it that you have resolved to park your life on the side of the road? God is not really concerned about the specifics of what she heard. What have you heard? Because ultimately, family, isn't that what faith is all about in the first place? You see, Paul tells us in Romans chapter 10, verse 17, you know this. So faith comes from hearing, and hearing through the word of God. But in a larger context, I believe that all of us would come to say that you and I came to know the Lord via hearsay. And while that won't hold up in court, it gets us in a lot of trouble. It's the reason that many of us came to know Jesus, because none of us were present to hear Jesus preach. None of us were there when Jesus died on the cross. None of us were there when they pierced him in the side. None of us were present to hear Jesus or to walk with Jesus or any of these things. So we are dependent upon hearsay. And if this woman can focus her faith based on what she hears about Jesus, that means she is in the same predicament as you and I, that she made a movement based off what she heard. And my question to you is that if you're not moving, then I got to ask you the question, maybe you ain't hearing the right things. You see, in the Bible, there's a chapter called the Hall of Faith. It's in Hebrews chapter 11. When you go home, read it for your devotional. It tells us that faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction or the evidence of things not seen. Or as we probably know, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of not seen, the evidence of things not seen. The writer then goes into description of all of those that find their portraits and images in the Hall of Faith. Can I show them to you? You see, it begins telling us that Abel offered a more acceptable sacrifice to God. Enoch pleased God by faith. By faith, Noah built an ark before ever seeing a drop of water. By faith, Abraham obeyed when God called him out of his home. By faith, Sarah received power to conceive even though she didn't have power at first. By faith, Abraham received power to conceive even though they didn't have their power. By faith, Abraham offered up Isaac as a sacrifice even though he was a son of promise. By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau. By faith, Moses was born and cast into the river. By faith, Moses left Egypt, and by faith he kept the Passover and sprinkled the blood so that the destroyer of the firstborn would not touch them. By faith, the children of Israel crossed the Red Sea. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell down. By faith, prophets conquered kingdoms, enforced justice, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the power of the fire, escaped the edges of sword, and were made strong out of weakness, became mighty in war, put foreign armies to flight. But then in verse 39 of chapter 11, it said, after all these things, though commended through their faith, they did not receive what was promised. In other words, what the writer is saying, everything I told you about what they did happened before the resurrection. Everything, all of the belief in the faith that they operated in was before Jesus got up from the grave. And so here we are in 2025 with your saved, sanctified, Holy Ghost filled, fire baptized self. I got a question. If they could do all of that before Jesus got up from the grave, why you still stuck where you are and you on the other side of the resurrection? Won't you know that song that says, because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone, and my life is worth living just because he lives. Won't you nudge your neighbor and say, neighbor, I know you wondering why I still keep moving, and I know you're wondering why I still keep pressing. I got a two-word answer as to why I keep on going. He lives. Why don't you go home today and write that on your doorpost? He lives. When you go home, when you go to work tomorrow and they getting on your nerves, you ain't got to pay them no attention. Just look at your screen and say, he lives. Because when you know that he lives, it transforms the way you go about your regular life. I know I can keep going because Jesus. That's she heard. She heard about Jesus. That's the grounds or the foundation. Why, sis, why, bro, you can keep on going? Because Jesus lives. When you're sick and tired, though, you've also got reason to hold on. Mark 5:25. Now a woman suffering from bleeding for 12 years. I love this woman, and I got to show y'all why. Hear me. Men are blessed beyond measure. Hear me? We here? We together? Um, because women, after reaching a certain age or level of physical maturity, wrestle with a monthly demon. You hear? Oh, yeah. Whenever a woman comes into contact with this demon or whatever, um, she's liable to lose 30 to 80 milliliters of blood. That means if this woman is bleeding on the regular, that means in 1 month's time, she would have lost a total of 120 milliliters of blood. So this means that in 1 year's time, she would have lost 1,440 milliliters of blood. Now hold on. The text says she's dealt with this issue for 12 years. So you got to multiply what she lost in 1 year by 12, which gives you 17,280 milliliters of blood. I'd have you to know that there are 473 milliliters in a pint. So hear me. If you take 17,280 milliliters of blood, which is the amount of blood she lost in 1 year, and divide it by 473, you get 37 pints of blood. Now, if science and ChatGPT is true, it states that a person only needs to lose 2 pints of blood to be at the risk of death. So if you take 37 pints of blood and divide it by 2, you find that in 12 years, she should have died 18 times. I get it. You missed it. Because the reality is, many of us are waiting on a shout, but I told you the shout was right there. The fact of the matter that you should have died 18 times in 12 years, that's what I'm supposed to be praising God for. Because let's be honest, I ain't got to wait on a new car, a new house, or a job promotion. The fact that I'm still here is enough for me to give God glory. I ain't got to give God praise off the fact. I can give God praise off this reality. Out of everything I've been through, I should have lost my mind. I should be locked up somewhere. I should be in an asylum right now. But the fact I still keep waking up and saying good morning and going to bed saying good night is good enough reason to still keep giving God praise. It reminds me of that song that we used to sing in the old church, that the old saints would say that he's a keeper. Yes, he is. That our God is a God of maintenance. He knows how to hold you where you are. He knows how to sustain you where you are. And some of us spend all day looking for a miracle. And the miracle is that you're still here. Who am I talking to? Because that also reminds me, y'all seen The Color Purple. Y'all remember when she was on the back of that car and she was looking at Harpo and he said, you're black, you're ugly, you ain't gonna ever be nothing, you ain't gonna never amount to anything. And you remember she sat on the back of that car as they were beginning to ride off. She said, I may be black and I may be ugly, but there's one thing I will tell you, that I'm still here. Where are the still here saints here that can give God about 10 seconds of praise, that can say, I may not have all I want, but I'm still here. I may be diagnosed, but I'm still here. I may be crazy, but I'm still. She was bleeding for 12 years, but she's still here. It's an irony. The irony is that I can be blessed and bleeding at the same time. The irony is that I can be bleeding on the inside, but that doesn't take away the fact that I'm not still blessed. I can be bleeding. I'm blessed. And matter of fact, some of you got to be honest. People don't know your story, but you're bleeding and blessed. I got to go. But when you're sick and tired, you can hold on. But then when you're sick and tired, you can go on. Verse 34, daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be healed from your affliction. Your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction. This woman's entire process has been very simple. If I can just touch the hem of his garment. That's all she's trying to do. Because she resolves, if I can just touch him, what I'm dealing with or have been dealing with will change. She touches Jesus, and the text says, instantly, suddenly, all of a sudden, her flow of blood ceased. Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around to the crowd and says, who touched me? Who touched me? I like the disciples. Because disciples say what you and I would have said. Yeah, you know, I tell people all the time, y'all got to be careful how y'all look at these disciples, because a lot of times they do what you and I would have done. Jesus, who touched me? And disciples say, Jesus? I know you omniscient, you all powerful and all that good stuff. But you in a crowd. What do you mean? Who touched you? You read back in verse 24. It says, in Mark chapter 5, your Bible's still open. It says, so Jesus went with him, and the large crowd was following and pressing against him. If you got the King James version, it says that they were thronging about him. That pressing against him was the phrase that the writer used. It literally suggests that they are closing in on Jesus on every side. So to some degree, we realize that Jesus has been touched. But Jesus said, I've been touched. Jesus said, I know I've been touched, but I've been touched. And please note in the passage, she comes to Jesus with fear and trembling, and Jesus calls her daughter. This is the first time that she has been directly referenced in the passage, and not by her condition, but by who she is to Jesus. The reason why that's important is because many of us do the same thing. We only know people by what they're struggling with. And when Jesus sees her, Jesus also offers her a different name. He says, daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction. Other translations say your faith has made you well. It's an interesting word there. Here, saved in this translation, because it's the Greek word called sozo, which speaks to holistic renewal. Her faith has led her to wholeness. But wait, Jesus also says, and be healed of your affliction. There is a difference, hear me. There's a difference between being saved and being healed. healed. You see, because being saved was holistic renewal. But here in the text, the word heal is where we get our word hygiene from. It means that she was healthy. And you got to be honest, there are people that you and I know that are healthy, but they ain't whole. And there are people that you and I know that are whole, but they may not be fully healthy. And now the Gospel of Mark is all about Jesus working these miracles. He has healed a number of people from various ailments and diseases up until this point, and will continue to do so after Mark chapter 5. But however, there are only two people in the Gospel of Mark that the text says your faith has made you well or whole. One person is Bartimaeus, who even after the crowd tells him to shut up, he receives a healing from Jesus, because while they're saying shut up, Bart, Bartimaeus is screaming out, Son of David, have mercy on me. And then Jesus says your faith has made you whole or well. And the other person is this woman. You see, there is an obvious difference. Why do some people receive healings and some people receive wholeness? Why? Why do some people receive from Jesus healings and others receive wholeness? All through the Gospel of Mark, the crowds follow Jesus. The crowds follow Jesus with the hope of receiving a miracle. And I ain't mad at that, because some of us need miracles. Some of us need things from the Lord. I ain't mad at that. As a matter of fact, that is what this woman was doing as well. She was following after Jesus because she needed something from Jesus. However, I do believe there's a difference between the word pressing in 24 of the crowds and the touch of this woman. I got to tell y'all, friends, that the word touch in the Greek does not mean just a touch with your finger, but it literally means that she reached out and fastened on to. She doesn't just touch Jesus. She reaches out and holds on to Jesus. You see, she held on for a little while. In other words, sometimes in order to receive from Jesus what others haven't, you got to be willing to hold on longer than others. That reminds me, you remember Jacob in Genesis 32? When he's wrestling with God, and then ultimately he says, hey, the angel says, let me go before the day breaks. And Jacob says, hey man, I ain't gonna let you go until you bless me. I came today to speak life into somebody. I came to speak to your endurance today. I know you've been holding on, but hold on just a little while longer. I know it's frustrating. I know you've been waiting for God to change that thing, but sometimes change is linked to your grip. And I'm after you today to tell you, I know you got every reason to throw in the towel. You got every reason to turn your back on God. You got every reason to maybe choose another option, but strengthen your grip, strengthen your hold, endure and hold on a little while longer. That's why I come to church on Sunday morning. That's why I pray and read my Bible, because every time I pray, I'm strengthening my grip. Every time I praise, I'm strengthening my grip. Every time I lift up my hands, I'm strengthening my grip. Who am I talking to here today that can say, neighbor, I'm strengthening my grip? That reminds me of that old song we used to sing when we were growing up. It would say, time is filled with swift transition, not on others unmoved can stand, but build your hopes on things eternal and hold to God's unchanging hand. Trust in friends, him who will not leave you whatsoever years may bring. If by earthly friends forsake him, still still more closely to him cling. Covet not this world's vain riches that so rapid lead decay. Seek to gain its heavenly treasures. They will never pass away. And this is my favorite verse. And when your journey is completed, if to God you have been true, fair and bright, your home in glory, you're enraptured, soul will view. And then you know this part. It said, hold to God's unchanging hands. I got about 5 minutes left, but I need you to turn to a neighbor and grab that neighbor by the hand and say, neighbor, I got a one-word blessing on you. I got a two-word blessing. Hold on. Just don't let go. I came to tell you, don't ever let Jesus go, because that's when he'll turn it around. There are people that come into church every Sunday, and some ain't got nothing to say, and some said, oh, I don't take all of that. I don't know why they doing all that yelling and all that shouting and jumping. And I get it, this praise ain't for you. This only for the folk that got a grip that need to get on. This for the people that need to hold on a little while longer. And sometimes you got to do something different than what you did before. I'm talking to the desperate folk. If you got something that you need from the Lord, lift up your hands, shout yes, shout yes, shout yes, shout yes. She got something different from the crowd, because while they touched, she held on.
Well, that is it. She was sick of it, and she made the decision to change her circumstances, and then it changed everything as a result of that. I don't know about you, but that blessed me in a major way, and I hope it bless you. Remember, we're still embarking on Finish Strong, and the description link is still present, so you can sign up and be a part as we are posturing ourselves for whatever God desires to do for us individually and corporately in 2026. I love you, and I'll see you next week. Peace.